Service, the IRS, the FDA, and the FBI had pinned a massive organizational chart to the wall. At the very top, beneath a red circle, was the name Stephen Warshak. They weren't looking into a mix-up with credit card processing. They were building a case for a massive, coordinated, criminal enterprise. They were preparing to breach the fortress, and they were bringing 50 armed agents to do it. Book 2, The Collision with Reality. Chapter 7, The Siege of Berkeley. Cincinnati, Ohio, March 16, 2005. The morning of March 16th dawned crisp and unremarkable in Ohio, a perfect slate for Stephen Warshak's usual routine of commanding his sprawling nutraceutical empire. He arrived at the Berkeley headquarters in his custom Mercedes, adjusting his tie as he strode past the manicured lawns. He didn't notice the unmarked vans idling in the adjacent parking lot. He didn't see the tactical gear being strapped on, or the clipboards being checked by stern-faced federal agents. Inside the building, the phones in the call center were already ringing with the usual chorus of frustrated victims trying to reach the elusive Michael Johnson. John Bradley was at his desk, rubbing his temples, preparing for another day of lying on company time. Then the heavy glass doors of the lobby swung open, and the world stopped. Federal agents, nobody move! The shout echoed through the cavernous lobby, loud enough to cut through the hum of 500 computers. 50 armed agents from the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, the FBI, the IRS, and the FDA flooded the building in a coordinated, militaristic wave. They wore windbreakers emblazoned with yellow acronyms. Some had their hands resting casually near their holstered weapons. John Bradley froze, his hand hovering over his headset. Across the floor, customer service reps dropped their phones. The relentless ringing of the call center was suddenly drowned out by the thundering boots of law enforcement. Step away from your computers. Do not touch your keyboards. An agent barked, moving swiftly down the aisles. Upstairs, in the executive suite, the door to Stephen Warshak's office was thrust open. 2 IRS agents walked in, flashing badges. Warshak, leaning back in his Italian leather chair, merely blinked. His trademark arrogant smile faltered, but only for a fraction of a second. "Gentlemen," Stephen said, his voice remarkably steady, "to what do I owe this dramatic intrusion? My lawyers are on speed dial. Save the dial, Mr. Warshak, the lead postal inspector replied, slapping a thick, bound document onto the marble desk. Search warrant. We're taking everything. And they did. For the next 10 hours, the federal government methodically dismantled the illusion Stephen had built. Agents hauled out boxes of files, sweeping the desks clean. They wheeled out 24 executive laptops and unscrewed hard drives from servers. They even seized the unopened mail, thousands of letters of complaint, and returned in Zeit bottles. In total, 7 tons of evidence over 13,500 documents were loaded into government trucks. As Stephen was escorted down to the lobby, he saw a sight that finally pierced his armor of arrogance. His mother, the woman who had sat in his damp basement taking those very first orders, was being questioned by an FBI agent. His sister and brother-in-law, both executives in the company, were being detained. The federal prosecutors had brought a 112-count indictment. The charge wasn't poor customer service. It was fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering on a massive, unprecedented scale. The feds alleged that between 2001 and 2006, Stephen had stolen $100 million directly from consumers' pockets without their consent. Even as he was placed in the back of a black SUV, Stephen's mind raced. This is just a misunderstanding, he told himself. A bump in the road. We grew too fast. I'll hire the best defense team in the country. I'll pay a fine. This will all magically go away. He couldn't conceptualize the reality that his empire of lies had finally met a wall it couldn't bribe, market, or smile its way through. Chapter 8, The Bottom Line. Atlanta, Georgia, January 2006. The walls of Kirk Wright's world were not breached by federal agents with guns. They were breached by silence. The new year arrived, bringing with it a chilling freeze on the cash flow of International Management Associates. The Ponzi scheme had hit its mathematical limit. There were no new Falcons players, no new doctors, no new marks to feed the beast. Alan Ehrlich, a 71-year-old retired businessman, sat in his study, staring at his computer screen. He had invested heavily with EMA after doing his due diligence. He had called references, read the paperwork, and trusted the glossy brochures. But his recent request for a routine withdrawal had been met with a bizarre string of excuses from Kirk. Ehrlich dialed Kirk's direct line. It rang for times before going to voicemail. He tried the